Hi everyone, this is Heather Blaisdell, Celebrity Witch, and today, oops, did you see that? Hi everyone, this is Heather, and today we are going to be talking with Sarah Love, and welcome to Eating Magic for Lunch, and we're going to be talking about the solstice, holding space, making a stand, and whatever else comes up in our conversation. So for those of you who do not know Sarah Love, um, you're going to get to meet her today. And I will let her introduce herself. This is Sarah.
Hello. Hi, I am Sarah Love, Hannah McCoy, and I am so excited to be here with the one and only Heather Magic Witch. And this has been a long time coming. I'm excited. Where are we going today?
Great. One of the things that Sarah does is these amazing calendars of affirmations. So we'll be talking a little bit about that today, as well as about love. So Sarah, I've spoken to you a few times, but I met Sarah. Actually, I don't even know if I've ever met Sarah in person.
I don't think so.
I met Sarah through a friend and through another group called The Blob, and that's how I was introduced to her and her work. And I think I got one of her calendars so long ago. I'm trying to think of even how long that was. So I've had Sarah's calendars and energy in my life for a long time. How long have you been making the calendars?
I've been making them for about 10 years, but probably at least 5 that you've had one, I think. Time flies.
Oh my gosh, it totally does. So I've always had them like, they say all sorts. Do you have a sample of your calendar, Sarah?
This is 2015. I went
Ooh.
full Magic Witch cover this year with the 3 of Pentacles. Shh, don't tell anybody. Every day has a little message. Some of them are sweet and fun, and some of them are kind of deep and roll it around in your mind for a while. And then every top has a nice little super juicy month to ring it in.
Oh, I love that. What is the one that says magic is value?
Your magic has value. This is one for the witches that we've been working on for a while now. Time to just spell it right out.
I love that. What month is that?
That's February.
February, the month of love.
Let's see what it says on your birthday. I love looking at your March 30th, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your thoughts alter the future. But you already knew that one, huh?
True story, true story.
Fun to play with. Yeah, life is beautiful and so are you. That's kind of one of my mantras for the whole world.
I love that. So for all our listeners out there, you're welcome to add your questions at any time. There's a question and answer section on the thing, and we'll just answer them as we kind of go along, as well as make space at the end. So, Sarah, I'm dying to ask you, when did you get so into love?
Oh, man.
Has this been a lifelong pursuit? Has this been in the last decade? What is the story about love? Tell me.
Good question. Well, the longer story, or from the beginning of this lifetime, I've always been a little bit confused about humanity and how we treat each other and the things that are going on. It was one of those early kind of things. My parents weren't very religious. Grew up in kind of around a lot of energy and conflict and people shouting at each other kind of space. So I would go and beg to go spend the night at friend's house and, that kind of program to get out of the environment. And a lot of my friends' parents went to church, so I would love to stay on Saturday night so I could get up and go on Sunday morning to whatever church my friends went to. It was always kind of like, what is the story with God and what are people talking about? It just wasn't part of my life growing up. So, of course, the parents of my friends were always more than happy to oblige, taking in a lost little lamb on the on the journey to get me in the youth group or whatever. So I went to a lot of different churches and never really felt, I didn't have a word for it, but the kind of level of hypocrisy that I still was feeling like within the people's homes, and then we'd go to church and they'd talk about this stuff, and then we'd go back home and it would be not lining up with what was going on. So it's always just kind of that seeker quest relationship with God. And I remember being young, really, really young, and always kind of building little altars and little, like, collecting rocks and things, like I'm sure a lot of us, you know, putting my little collection out. And that was how I started out, was like I liked physical objects that made me feel special or have some connection. And then the love thing was kind of given to me. Went on a nice hippie path, found the Grateful Dead in high school, like found my tribe in that space of like people can be kind and loving and dance and all of that. So that was like a nice homecoming. I felt like maybe I'm not just an alien living in this life. There is these little subgroups of people that believe in peace and love. So that was kind of awesome. And then I got the name Sarah Love kind of within that little story of time in my VW bus and traveling, and then it kind of went away. I went on another, you know, long journey of life and self in my 20s, and then I found my way to Burning Man in my late 20s, and the name Sarah Love came back up, and it just kind of kept sticking to me through my art. So when I started making the calendar, I named my little business, you know, selling calendars, Sarah Love Creations, and then it just has become part of my name now. So it's something I try to live up to, that's for sure.
And when you say love, what do you mean exactly? What is love for you?
Well, love, I guess love for me is so many different things. I think of it kind of in two parts in my brain. There's like love is God part and love is a verb part. You know, and so it's one of those things that is almost impossible to, it's like settling for words every time I try to explain it. It's like the divine, you know, like to try to put that into the English language just never quite feels like you nail it. But love as a verb for me is about first on the inside. You know, my path definitely started from what I just mentioned about my background, from a place of not very loving story, self, voices, lots of insecurity, lots of self-loathing. So that way of transforming love in the inner, which is a lifelong work, is really where everything comes from. Is really kind of the place that I want to inspire, so that the bubbling out is the action, is that the love becomes something that we create and talk about and treat each other and feel as a priority. And we just kind of look at every decision we make. Okay, what's the most loving choice? What's the most loving for me? It just kind of becomes the target that I try to aim at is love. It's like the compass, you know, like, okay, how loving am I being right now in my creative process, in myself, and in traffic, you know, I mean, there's just every moment it's kind of an opportunity to, and then it's about not judging, because you can go down the blame and shame road if you're not being loving and all that. So it's just a constant, like, okay, How loving is this? That's how
What is loving for you though? So it's so interesting to talk around love, and I totally understand that it's hard to put it into words. But for me, sometimes that word kind of gets just thrown out there like a blanket. Oh, you should be loving, or I love this, or I love that. But like in your own work and what you've noticed for yourself, and also by taking a stand for love, like actually like committing to standing in that energy. What's shown up, because in my own world and experience, whenever we stand for something, we are going to be tested in that area. So, for example, you know, when you set your New Year's resolutions and you're like, I'm going to be loving, or I'm receiving love this year, then you'll often also see where you are not loving, where you're not able to receive love, or your definition of that might change. So in your own practice, in choosing that, what is like as a practice? What is loving for you? What is that energy for you? I mean, because you're committed to it, and it's in your name now.
Yeah, it's not going anywhere. It's
Yeah.
right in the face. And I think that's such a great point, and about that old adage about teaching what we most need to learn in life, because I've always been fairly loving. Like my default is really give people the benefit of the doubt, kind of like that loving, sort of easygoing, like it's all good, I totally understand, you're just human, you know, it's cool, kind of that. But to take a stand for it, and how does it show up for me has been totally way more of like love warrior on the inside, like where the battle goes on, and how I work with love, or how I embody love, is about accepting and loving this moment, my body when I get out of the shower. Like it's really so much about being present, because past and future, I mean, we know that that's just story. That's just talk, you know. But to be loving in this moment is to seriously be diligent about what is going on, what story I'm telling in this moment. And it's not about butterflies and rainbows and love. I mean, I totally did that for a long time, and that was, you know, part of the journey, was like, just paint a freaking rainbow on it. It's okay. Like, put a heart-shaped Band-Aid over that gash and just kind of go, you know? I don't really want to go there, you know? And so loving now, I've finally distilled it to right now in this moment, because and when I mentioned being in traffic, it's like the choice that I feel in that moment, in the traffic, like someone cutting me off in front of me, or someone not, I kind of have a little lead foot, so someone not driving fast enough and holding me up. It's that moment where I check myself and realize that either I'm emanating shit and judgment and frustration into the thing that is all of it, or I'm emanating love. So in that moment, and that's okay, whatever it is, it's okay, because the choice is about being loving. So if I emanate some frustration and then later on down the road be super pissed at myself and be upset that I was so frustrated, that's just compounding the vibe. So the battle for me is like letting whatever happen, whether I'm pissed and judging or whatever, and then having the next moment to choose love. Having the next moment to say, oh my gosh, make up some story about that person that cut me off that's late to go to the emergency room because somebody's in there. I mean, whatever meaning that I have to create to get into a loving space is my choice. I'm creating meaning every second. So if I can create a meaning that gets me to have love and compassion and feel connected in that moment, that's what I strive for. That's the love in action, that what I feel like love is for me. It's like the choice and then the action together.
Yeah, when you're talking, it keeps reminding me of compassion. So I'm so curious about, when we say love, there's so many different types of love and so many different relationships where love is expressed in different ways. So when you're connecting to the energy of love, for me, it keeps showing up like compassion. That's what it is. So when you're looking at, but how I often see it used out in public has so much to do with like romantic love. And when we are a stand for love, I don't know about your work, but in my work we use that energy a lot. Like, what are we standing in? Really creating a circle that we are committed to expressing and being in. And sometimes I feel like when people are talking about love, it is in that rainbow fairyland energy where, in my work, when we're looking at love, on the other side is often fear. And, being able to connect, it's like, oh, not choosing either one, but how do you go deeper and not avoid things by, frosting it with a little bit of love, which can work sometimes, absolutely, having a little love frosting on something. But when we're looking at sustainability and creating a ground for ourselves, and especially as we're coming into the solstice energy and the darkness, and really holding space for the light within, and looking at the end of the year, I know a lot of people, and probably you as well, especially as business owners, we're always looking forward because in order to run a good business, and especially if you're in the calendar business, you're definitely looking ahead at the energies and holding space for them. And you and I have talked about this a little bit, but how do you stay in love, or standing in love, when there's a shitload of stuff to do, and you're also planning ahead, but also wanting to stay in the present, So have you found that there's any good techniques that you have discovered, or, even bringing all of this conversation into ritual, and, ritual is so much about creating the space and setting the intention, and, understanding that when you are going for love, you are also standing in willingness to be in relationship with your fear, because, love, compassion, trust, right? That's all about being open and being vulnerable, as well as it brings up the other stuff, control, anxiety, those places where we are really tight. And, how do you, for you in your own practice, really create that middle ground where everything is welcome, and really holding that energy of love while still having boundaries, because I think that has been coming up a lot for the people that I work with, especially this time of year when people are in relationship with their families and their intimates, and seeing people and drinking. All sorts of shit can come up. And one of my students this week asked a great question about how do you know between boundaries and your growth edge? Like, oh, is this a boundary edge or boundary? Like really being able to set clear, clean boundaries and still stand in love and how those things are related. So, I mean, how do you work? How do you see it
Well,
at this moment?
first, at this moment, it really brings to the forefront for me that I stand for love. The whole movement for me and the whole commitment for me came from pain and suffering. I mean, that's where it was. You know, that's the mother of the stand is because there's so many times in my life that I've just felt freaking hopeless to do anything for the suffering in the world, the suffering in my family, the suffering in myself. And there's so many nights I've just like cried and out of sheer desperation of like, this is totally effed up, you know? And then I stand for love, those 4 words came together like a lightning bolt waking me up in the middle of the night. So it wasn't really an intellectual choice. It wasn't really like, oh, this would be cool and kind of idyllic, you know, world. It woke me up at night and I just felt this, I stand for love. What do you stand for? You know, these questions and this whole thing. And there was no bigger or better aim for me personally than to take that stand, than to say, okay, here's this life. I mean, it may not be my one life, but this is the life I have right now. And what do I stand for? What do I want? What do I want to leave? What do I want to like have a legacy of being a stand for? Is love. And any time that we declare something, yes, it is. Every space that is unaligned with that is going to be revealed. And so it's a really cool practice to know, to find out what is underneath and what is the shadows and what is the places, where does the healing need to go, is to declare I am or I stand for this. And to me, this life is, if I didn't have this work, if I didn't have this work on myself, it just seems like, what's the point? It seems like this kind of boring life. Like there's not a lot of things that motivate me outside. I mean, I'm motivated to make changes. I'm motivated to have a prosperous life. I'm motivated to have an awesome relationship, all of that. But what really feels like this lifetime is about is all that stuff that you just talked about, is just that, the questions and the changes and the journey. And that's the juice. That's like the thing that makes me feel alive, the thing that gets me up, the constant thing, the constant thread that weaves through my life is that questions and the seeking and the healing and the who am I, you know? So taking a stand for love was creating a container, was creating a definition for me to feel like there was some power there for me. Like I know now what where my bar is, you know, where my seeking is aimed at. It's not this spiraling, well, it is, of course, a spiraling journey, but there's at least this mantra or this, what do you call it, battle cry, you know, that guides me. And so in my practices and in my life, like where kind of the question was emerging from, how love shows up for me is constantly changing. And sometimes love is falling on the bathroom floor in fetal position. Like sometimes that is the most, because love,
I love that.
And truth, you know, all these things we can interchange. I feel like beauty, truth, love, joy, compassion, what you were saying, it's like the words are so, they can shift and change meaning, and we all have different stories around it. But the most loving thing is to live, you know, love and life and creativity and intuition, like all that stuff to me is super duper linked in my own healing, my own self-loving journey. And so it's not about perfection. It's not about this ideal of love, love. It's about the juicy up, down, above, below, inside, outside, all the parts of ourselves and how they come together, where they mesh, where they meet, where they rub up against. And when you're talking about how do you know the boundaries, you know, it's like kind of like what's fear and what's love in that way. It's like what's the thing that says, like, I want to move, I want to get away from this pain, and I'm going the other way, and I'm afraid of this whole closet full of stuff, and I'm not even going to open the door. And what's the thing that says, I'm gonna choose love for me and not open that door? You know, so I think that's what you were kind of question is like, and that's only for us as individuals to decide. I mean, there's really nothing, no real, there's a million guidelines, there's a million teachers, and there's a million books written, thank goodness, there's a million songs to sing, you know, about how to find it, but it's really only true for you. And so the loving choice could be to walk away and say, no, thank you, I'm not doing that family gathering this year, or whatever.
Oh, I've done that.
And the loving choice might also be to bring your wounds and show up and see, maybe it's about someone else needing some love and how to elevate. You know, sometimes when we help out and when we heal and when we inspire someone, it heals us in a way that we couldn't do in a vacuum of our own search and our own healing. You know, so it's about making those choices for ourselves. I know that for me, honestly, I would rather there was like a answer that I could look up and it was just like the absolute truth, and I just get to go there and open that book and find out what it is, and that's all everything. But
do you really wish that? Do you really wish that?
No.
You love the journey. Come on now.
I
know.
Sometimes I wish it, though. There are moments.
Oh, yeah. You know, that idea, for me, that reminds me of the energy of giving our power away, where we, like, want the answer. We want the answer so bad. It's so important to us that we're looking outside ourselves. And though it's amazing and informative, you know, to be in relationship and to be able to access books and movies and media and all that, I loved what you said about love is in the present. That love is found in the present. And, you know, even with books and media and all that total magic that people have created before us and will create in front of us, really that energy is found in the present, And when you're speaking, I just keep coming back to this idea of like practical practices, and even when we're coming into relationship with our families, how do we create love? Because for me, the holidays have always been awkward. And when I was a kid, you know, I loved, oh my God, love Santa. Let me just say that. Santa is amazing. And I love the God of gifts. But the whole, and I, you know, love Jesus too. Jesus was cool. But that idea of what are we giving birth to at this time of year, and in the darkest, like really going to the darkest place, and you know, with no sunlight right now in the northern hemisphere, getting to that place and finding what is that, you know, for you, that energy shows up as love, right? When you go into the light inside, but it's a little bit different for everyone, of course. How they're going to phrase it, like you said, like it has different words for different people. Like for me, it's so much about magic. Like there's a total obsession with magic, and So, and I know you love art and magic as well, as do I. And looking at what practices, for me, it's like always, how do we translate this into practical? So one way you've talked about is, through the mind. Like if you're not in a loving space, then you would shift the story. Or if you were in a place that or not even going if something is not feeling that good. Like, oh, I'm not going to attend that or whatever. But I'm also so curious as to what your magic practice or your art practice has given you with regards to love. And we also have a couple questions that are popping up, so I'm just going to look at those real quick. One of the questions is love the deep feeling of gratitude? I love that. That's from Sarah. And the other question that's on the board right now is, doesn't everyone choose to have relationships for egotistical reasons? Oh, I love that question as well. So, what do you think, Sarah? What do you think?
Well,
so the
first,
practices.
First I want to say about the practices for sure.
Yeah.
Because just in the last little bit of my art creative work and magic and love and all of these things kind of intertwining, I have realized that the creative process, whenever we sit down to create, whether it's a blank canvas or whatever it is, it's such an opportunity for unloving stuff to come up. I have just finally put my finger on this. It's like when I'm looking at
a double-edged sword. I agree.
Yeah, when you're looking at a blank canvas, or you're even halfway into your project or whatever, oh, mama, it is like, let's talk not loving. Let's freaking go all the way down to I'm a piece of shit kind of not loving like stuff, right? And so my practice, magic is a huge part of everything, because that's just that's just like church, that's where I feel like I'm communing with bigger energies. And so I think that being in a space of self-loving or self-acceptance or compassion is a really powerful straight line to some power, to source, to hearing true intuitive, there's all this questions about how do I know the intuitive voices and all of that. Well, for me, it's like when I can feel and let go and quiet the demon, unloving stuff inside of me, I feel like magic is on. So I do a lot of talking to myself. I wake up in the morning and I try 90% of the time to the first thing I say is I love you, and I'm talking to myself. And so usually I put my hands on myself and I try to give myself a couple minutes to come awake, and sometimes it is like, oh no you don't, and other times it feels so good and loving and it's so true right from the moment I wake up, and there's all points in between depending on the day and the dreams and the things I've got scheduled and all that. But that is the first thing that I really put into my practice, is I say I love you out loud when I wake up in the morning. And I do it in the mirror too.
I love this. I think the out loud piece is so weirdly important. I found that so true. Even if I lose my keys, if I stay in my head about it, it takes me so much longer to find them than when I say it out my fucking mouth.
Yeah.
Where are my keys? Show me my keys. I love that idea though of waking up to love. It's so easy to roll over and say I love you to your partner, or maybe that's not easy for everyone, but
easier maybe.
Or my 3-year-old is laying right next to me, so I would have to say it over her to him. But I love that idea of just like starting your day off with a little self-love and bringing consciousness to that. That's
I'm a real basic. I mean, this is we didn't start out with unloving, as moms, it's been so much repetition of shit. So the more repetition, that's why I love doing the calendar, because I believe in a lot of repetition to have new beliefs and new truths that, but to sort of wake up and say that basic, profound, I'm into simple, life-shattering things that just interrupt. Like before, there's this whole agenda. I try to catch myself before, when I'm still kind of coming through, when anything is possible, when there's just all in between the worlds moment. That's the moment where you can have this like ninja sneak attack on any other things that are going on. So
I love the idea of sneaking on yourself with love.
Yeah.
Woo, I got myself. That's good. Yeah, it's been interesting in my current game that we're playing, the Rockstar Trust game, that love is coming up so much, because in order to be in trust, right, it's also the energy of love. You have to be willing, right, to be in relationship with yourself, because High Priestess energy is intuition and self-respect and self-value and self-resourcing, and especially as women, right, who are right now having a huge fucking awakening globally, which is amazing, that we are taught, not to love ourselves, and that there's a very limited image for women's bodies, and yet, in my experience, my work, what I've come to recognize is that our power is really coming from within our actual bodies. And when we are disconnected from our relationship with our bodies, we are also limiting our power to a great degree. And so I love how you said that morning piece, because I do my meditations in the morning, because that's the best time actually to get between worlds. That's when the veil is thin, as we say in Magic Land. And coming in with a starting thought is great, of course. And then I was wondering, I think art is like also a great way to, when you say yes to your creativity, that is a loving thing, because we are here to create, and we're constantly creating. That's why when someone says, "Oh, I'm not creative," I literally feel like my head pops off and a screaming banshee comes out and wants to kill. Really, it's totally an unloving response to, yeah, I could go deeper into that. But when I'm looking at these questions, I'm really loving, I don't know if it's Sonia or Sunny, but like that energy of, doesn't everyone choose to have relationships for egoic reasons? I think that is such an interesting question. So I'm going to let you, this I think is an interesting question.
It is very interesting. Well, there's so many layers in there. It's like to unpack that question. Because first of all, some relationships, I feel like, are so beyond actual ego choice, or the ego's, whatever the ego's got planned. Relationships and life and people and human things, family, lovers, all of that stuff to me is so deep and wide as far as the why we do it, and why we call each other in, and what we're up to, and what we're trying to get at. So, yeah, the ego's, there's no doubt that the ego's everywhere. The ego's involved in life in every moment, I feel like. And there's other mysteries that I don't even pretend to understand, that it's about one thing or the other. And I'll say that about love, too. I have no darkness when I think about the solstice and I think about this new moon on the solstice and, like you said, in the northern hemisphere, this total amazing magic darkness, to me that's total love. Death is total love.
I love that.
Like there's not life, love, and death, bad. Like to me that just doesn't, there's no separation. Like to me, when you said killing, like ripping the head off somebody or your head popping off or whatever, I was kind of like, the sword, the loving sword. I mean, I don't have any compartment for that. Yeah. So I think we definitely do a lot of relationship stuff with our egos, and it's a really great learning ground for
it is
playing shit out or learning or evolving, whatever we're doing. But I would also say that there's way more stuff that is total mystery to why humans come together in relationships and why we come through, the mothers that we come through, and why the fathers are part of our beings. And yeah, that I don't, so that's where I get into a much bigger question.
Yeah, for me, the ego is what we're conscious of. So I can only speak for myself here, but coming, and I'm going to speak in romantic relationship. I would say, hell yeah, the ego's involved. So even though I don't always have control over what I fall for, and at this point in my life, in my early 40s, I have a lot of awareness about my patterns and what I've been repeating, right? So that's definitely egoic. But what you're talking about, Sarah, in that unconscious piece and the mystery piece, I mean, in magic especially, life by nature is 96% mystery. So we might think we know why we're in relationship with someone, but do we really know? And like, how many are there? Like, I can just say for myself, like when I met my husband, I was surprised because he wasn't my type. He also had a job, which wasn't my type.
Right.
And but he was beautiful. I mean, he is like one of the most attractive human beings I've ever seen. And even though he wasn't my type, because I like the tall, skinny, dark-haired dudes, and he was like silver-haired and just really gorgeous. But for other people would be like, oh, he's so beautiful. I remember thinking like, oh, do I really get to marry someone this beautiful? This is amazing. And for me personally, triggered stuff around my own childhood and growing up as the one with the personality. And that it was my mom or my sister who were the beautiful ones, but I was the funny one, the creative one, which was really painful for both. I think everyone in my family, especially my sister, who was also very creative, to be pigeonholed like that. So when we're in relationship, I think, yes, of course, there's tons of ego stuff, and I personally don't think the ego is bad. I personally love my ego, and it's more about having a healthy relationship with our own ego so that we can be loving and vulnerable, because love and ego together, I don't know about that relationship. Can you be like, the ego is so much about protection as well, and holding a space and creating some kind of container. So we're always being asked to relook at that and reframe that and come into a different space with that. But I think that's like a great question and definitely worth considering, especially when we stay in relationship too long.
Yeah, absolutely.
And overstaying is a problem. It's a big problem.
And I would say this about the relationship between the ego and love is that part of what I guess have put my finger on recently about my mission is, what if people's egos were really into creating a loving world? What if it was super cool to be the most loving person in the room and everybody's like, no, I'm the most loving, and they totally got like the most ego boost whenever they were like the lovingest being ever, you know? And so what if that became like a really great way to just feel so good about yourself? And it is. I mean, I will testify. It is a really great way when you can be really loving to feel like, oh yeah, I'm
super loving.
I'm so loving, and I'm doing a really good job in this whole like loving thing, and I get extra brownie points from all my lovingness. I mean,
love that.
Yeah, it's like, why not?
Yeah, I would say that in my world, in my realm, that would be a great way to leverage the ego, to actually make it work for you, to play a game and see if you can actually create more love by playing loving.
Yeah.
So that's not like a false loving. It's
Right.
actually a conscious intention to bring that energy through. And for me, it's so hard to even speak about love without speaking about vulnerability, because that willingness to be open and be who you really are, and what we're working on in Rockstar Trust has been like telling the truth without blame or judgment. So even if you're drawing a boundary and saying, I love you, but I'm not showing up because this is how I feel in your space, that's loving for everyone. And you may not know how that rolls out. People might not like it at first or choose to not participate with you, but like, what is it to really hold a loving space for yourself and others? Doesn't mean taking shit. You know, I had a mantra all last year that I think came through Rob Bresney's news feed on Facebook, which was, do no harm, but take no shit. And that was really helpful for me. Mm-hmm. to move through. So I'm going to look at a couple other questions. So there's a question here from Sarah Sychek, who I just love. She's in my program right now. And she says, is love the deep feeling of gratitude? So how do you see gratitude and love together, Sarah?
That's a good question. I think gratitude is like such a I want to use the word easy. It's like the easy path, but that's not exactly it. But gratitude, deep gratitude, can definitely be an access point or a very aligned feeling of love, because it opens up. Because that's where it all is. It's another one of those things that's kind of all-encompassing, of trust and compassion and acceptance. When you're in deep gratitude, it's all good, for lack of a better term. It's so moving. It's such a beautiful well to drink that feeling. And so yeah, I mean, if that's, again, it's like personal, because if that's when you feel that feeling of deep gratitude and your body lights up with love. Oh, remind me, I want to teach you I want to say another little thing about a practice that I do. But
great.
Yeah, deep gratitude is super love, because you do look around at the world. Like when you can put those deep gratitude goggles on and have that deep gratitude in your being, you are being loving. Yes, I'm so grateful for that.
Oh my God, it's amazing!
It is a way of accepting. Yeah.
I totally agree with you, and it's cross-discipline. I actually read across disciplines for all my material when I start researching on a subject or whatever. And gratitude is definitely what you are saying, that an access point. It's like a doorway or a window. So just as a practice, it's a great way to bring yourself back. Bring yourself back to the present moment. It's a great way to as Sarah was saying, as you were saying, invite that energy back into your space, and it's weird. It's weird how it works. It's sort of like a magic button. Oh, what can I be grateful for in this moment? Because it's not false. Our mind tends to dwell on what we're being critical of, and it's almost like it masks out all of the other things. Like, oh, how beautiful are these trees outside? How amazing is this breath, this in breath? Like, so also breathing, allowing yourself to breathe fully in and fully out, like that receptivity, like allowing yourself to have a full in breath is a big deal. A lot of people, especially the folks that I get the opportunity to work with, hold their breath at night. Or you like have the shortness of breath, you'll be able to tell. So, and you were saying there's a practice that you have.
Well, that's a perfect breath. That's a perfect segue, because something that I do, again, that's super duper simple is when I'm sitting and meditating in the morning, after I've gotten up, and I will breathe in love. I will take a deep, deep breath and just think about the word love, not even try to find it or search for it, but just say love, either silently. And I can literally start to give myself goosebumps now that I've been doing this for so long. And that's when I kind of feel like I hit the zone, is just to do that deep breathing. And it brings up a really great point about nourishment and love. And the breaths, like the receiving and the giving, when loving choices involve a lot of nourishment to yourself, and it doesn't have anything to do with whatever you've learned or whatever anybody else judges as nourishing, but there's something that is loving yourself, and making a loving choice is about that in-breath, is about that, and the out-breath, and releasing, and letting go, and all of that together. But there's something really linked in knowing what nourishes you and having that be a way to be loving to yourself.
Yeah, I definitely don't think women are having an issue with giving or extending. But that piece about, one, identifying what is nourishing for you, and having the crystal balls to put it in your schedule. To say, oh, this is actually what I need, and it's not like, I just keep coming back to this idea of like a feel-good exercise. Being loving is not necessarily a feel-good exercise, or nourishing yourself, or taking a deep in-breath, or taking a class, or joining a group of other folks to connect with, and to have good boundaries, and to really know what's true for you. It is, as Sarah was saying, totally loving. So when I'm just looking at this last question here from Samantha, who is also in Rockstar Trust. Hi, Samantha. She says, when one is feeling triggered, is there a practice that brings you to choose love? I love that. Trigger. Woo! Trigger, trigger. Activation.
Yeah. Well, I learned this from one of my favorite teachers, Jennifer Posada. She describes loving choices as comforting, fun. Like what for you would be comforting when you're triggered is choosing love. And you think, like I mentioned, crying on the bathroom floor. If I went and got a pillow and just went right back there and cried some more, that would be a little comforting for me. Crying with a pillow versus on the tile would be a choice that would be like, okay, this is a little more comfortable, and now I can stay here for a half an hour and freaking go for it, rather than being shivering and uncomfortable. And then holding back the tears because I'm uncomfortable. So there's when you're triggered, and it's all tied together. It's so beautiful because when you're triggered, it's like you have to find that, and it's always changing. and it's always in the moment. You know, it's always new, because it can also be a difference between some times when that holiday party would be great because you've scheduled some awesome time for yourself, you're feeling really good, and that same opportunity to go do that thing that at another time when you're totally spent, you feel like crap, feels like the worst choice in the world. You know, so it all is about the energy of what you're choosing. And it's like going to the gym, not my favorite, I'll admit, but it's like building a muscle. When you get triggered and you go on a little quest to figure out what would be loving, what would be comforting for me, what can I do to shift my energy, and listen and do your own work around it, it gets easier. Your muscle gets stronger. You get into a better default mode of doing those things for yourself. It's a practice. And so it's fun to see what comes up. I'm always a little bit surprised by what comes up for me sometimes about when I'm really in the inquiry, instead of knowing that going to get that bar of dark chocolate is like what will help the situation right now. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's not the thing, but a lot of times I'll just go shove that in my mouth anyway because I think that's my thing. You know, that's comforting or that's good for me. So it's such a practice of staying in the questions and staying curious about it. So when you are triggered, it's like, what would feel better, to go off on this person who triggered me? Okay, let me follow that little rabbit hole. Let me see how that would feel. Okay, and maybe that means writing in your journal everything in your brain, never intending to actually say it to someone. Maybe it means having that conversation with someone. Maybe it's like, what would feel good for me right now is to go get myself an orgasm, however that could happen. I mean, that could be like, you know, you got to stay in your own curiousness, because sometimes it's really addicting to be triggered. It's addicting to be like, I'm just going to, you know, and we're so used to that space that we just can't let it go. It just is like, oh no, I'm just going to be, I'm just going to, and so it's, if you like a challenge, I feel like part of the whole I stand for love thing for me is it's just about being challenged. It's about being a rebel. It's about kind of going against the norm of how we're told is the way to behave, you know, and standing for love is never something that anybody said was a good idea or easy. And so so I like that challenge piece, that excitement around, okay, I'm triggered, this feels shitty, maybe I'm kind of like it, maybe I just want to stay here for a little while, or I'm triggered, I do not like this, I do not want to stay here, okay, what do I need? What do I need? What's going to be fun? Do I need to call that friend of mine that will always tell me something good and make me laugh? Yes, I'm going to dial that person's number. So there's so much about taking action and being curious. You know, it's like, every moment a trigger can happen. So
I agree. For myself, you know, in my work, triggering or activation, or when you feel a charge, like you feel energy there, most often it's always about, my experience has been, it's always about the past. Like, is it really that thing happening? Really often it's unfelt feelings or assumptions. Like, assumptions are, you know, I would always, when you're talking about staying curious, how I would frame that is to really question your assumptions. And, you know, new action or doing something different, or even just coming undone, or allowing what is present to happen, those are all definitely options. But in magic, and what I would say to reduce the level of trigger, because you're always going to be triggered, and that's how you know you're alive, and it's great. I'm definitely not anti-trigger, but in my work, the moving forward piece is always to feel. Like, just fucking get in your body and feel it. Like, let that rush come through you. Feel it. Do any memories come up with that? And then, you know, for me, my work will always be channeling that into our creative work and into our Fearless Journal. and really digging into what is that piece, and how old is it, like what age does this connect to,
Mm.
can really open up to where you didn't feel love in the past, and being able to really bring more compassion and gratitude to your young self that also, lives within.
Absolutely.
So I just thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing all those amazing ideas and practices, and also sharing your passion about living your purpose. And I think really that, in my work, it really is so much about allowing yourself to be radiant, to really be consciously radiating your energy and having a focus. So whether your focus is love or your focus is truth, I always encourage everyone to just pick something, because everything is connected and everything can kind of flow through that access point. And our job here is to grow. So when we're being triggered, that often shows us where we are still tight or holding or controlling. And it's often an opening for us to feel more and have a bigger experience of our life. And like Sarah was talking about, with love and gratitude and acceptance, to feel more of our energy, just allowing more of ourselves. When we're in love, there is flow, and we can actually channel more energy, more creativity, and more magic in our lives, as opposed to when we're not in that place, it's constrictive. So there's a reason that you would definitely want to have a more expansive relationship with love, or especially, for me, and I know this is important for Sarah, with creativity. So speaking of that, we wanted to thank you everyone for your questions. Just wanted to say tomorrow is the solstice, pre-solstice meditation ritual that I will be leading, and I invite everyone to join. It's at 6 o'clock in the morning, and you can register by emailing info@heatherblaisdell.com. And I hope to have you with us. We're going to be really working on holding space, and I'm going to give you a secret preview. We're going to be looking at the space we're holding, and then we're going to expand it and see what happens when we do that. And because sometimes we're like so awesome, but we give ourselves like this much space to channel our fucking power. We're like, how can I be the volcano of awesome when I have a pinhole to channel through? So we're going to be going in deeply in the energetics of that, and really looking at what space we're holding and what areas we're holding, and then looking at how do we expand that to hold more room for our awesome creativity to channel into the new year. And as we finish, speaking of the new year, Sarah's amazing calendars are out. And Sarah, why don't you talk about how people can purchase those calendars? And I also want to just write down the people who are. So if you are on this call today, as we're finishing, just put a little comment in the question thing so I can know who's here, and we will send you a calendar to one of the lucky winners. So as Sarah's talking, just put a question in the question box, and she'll tell you how you can connect with her, connect with I Stand for Love, as well as get a calendar.
Yes. Yay. Thank you so much, Heather. I love you. I love your magic. You've been a really great teacher for me, so hallelujah, finding each other. And the I Stand for Love website is istandforlove.com. You can go on there. I didn't really mention this, but I have a I Stand for Love manifesto. It's 8 things to keep the love zone. So this is a downloadable little poster on my website. So you can just download this, print it off, hang it up to keep you in love warrior strong mode. And then there's a little Shop-O Love on my website where you can get this little beautiful, happy, awesome, inspiring magic calendar for you to stay inspired all year long. Every single day is a different message. It's a little bit crazy, and it's a lot of love. You know what I'm gonna do for everybody on this call? We'll pick a winner, and I'll send this in the mail, old-fashioned style, straight to your mailbox. But I'll go on my website right now and put a discount code on for this for you and your tribe.
Oh, awesome! Thank you.
Yeah, we'll do. They're only $12, but we'll do 15% off with the code Magic Love. I'll go add that right now, and so when you're in checkout, you can put in the coupon code Magic Love and get a Magic Love discount for being with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So again, I didn't see any questions in the box, but if you are watching, can you just email me info@heatherblaisdell.com, and I will make sure that you get all the information, and I will also let you know who the winner is. Have a great day. Thank you, Sarah. You're the best.
Thank you so much. Awesome.
Yay.